everybody. Want to do a little story time today? A little story time. This is about the story. Actually, this is good. It blends well with what I've been talking about recently. This is about the story of when my sociopathic husband, ex-husband, told my children that I was dead. Yeah, you heard it right. So, if you haven't